Hi, and welcome to Let's Talk with Parul. It's another episode with another conversation that really needs to happen. Well, the news is not so great. As a nation, we've all been quite devastated by the sad news that happened this weekend. A young life full of talent and potential snuffed out so early. Without getting into any speculation, blame game, and hearsay, let's talk about the mental health aspect of it today. And we do know that that was at the root of the tragedy. And it's about time we come together and resolve to get rid of the stigma around mental health so that some conversations happen. Let's understand, let's be empathetic, and most importantly, let's talk. In this episode of Let's Talk with Parul, we're taking up one aspect of mental health that is so common and shockingly, it barely is ever discussed: postpartum depression. Intense feeling of helplessness, hopelessness, exhaustion just when a baby is born, and that interferes with the new mom's ability to function. A WHO report from a few years ago estimates the prevalence of postpartum depression to be 22%, almost a quarter of new moms, and we're still not taking it seriously. So today on my panel, I have two women who will help us to take this discussion further and work out different aspects of it. But I also have the voices of all of you, members of the Let's Talk with Parul Facebook group, members of our support groups on Momspresso, so many mothers who have experienced the trauma of postpartum depression and want only one thing: more awareness of the condition so that other moms don't have it so bad. Let me get started by introducing our guests today. So we have with us Sangheetha Parthasarathy. She's a mother of two. She's an award-winning entrepreneur and internationally acclaimed speaker. Sangheetha is a birth doula and a childbirth educator who is specialized in postpartum mental health. We also have with us Ritu Vaishnav. She's a mom, an author, a journalist. Her new book, Inside a Dark Box, I'm going to be showing that to you, of course, published by Penguin, is a wonderful starting point for conversations around mental health. What got her started on this topic was her own experience with severe postpartum depression. Sangheetha, I always seem to start with the basics in these conversations, but I think it's very important to set the context. And my first question to you really is that, a lot of times we are being dismissed because they say, like postpartum depression is dismissed because they say, oh, these are normal baby blues. Sabke saath hota hai, hamare saath hota hai. Our elders say that because they've never come across this term. They've never been diagnosed in, their times and all. They lived with it. They struggled and suffered through it. So let's first start by understanding the difference between postpartum depression and what they call baby blues.
Thanks, Parul. Great to be here. So that's a good question. I think, to me, I think it's important to understand that these are semantics, right? So these are different levels, if you will, right? So if you wanted to kind of paint the picture, you can say this baby blues, which is birth, however natural or however less interventional, is a significant event on the body, right? So there is a lot of integration and processing of what happened that goes on in the nervous system and in the body, and generally that lasts about 3 to 6 weeks, right? So there is a level of hypervigilance. There is a level of the mother's body playing back the birth, right? That's an evolutionary purpose to kind of keep our baby safe, etc., right? So what happens is generally you would see that it settles down over a period of time, but then our postpartum mental health is really on the spectrum, right? If you think about baby blues, then you have postpartum depression, then you have postpartum anxiety, then you have postpartum psychosis, right? And then there is PTSD, which is post-traumatic stress. So it's slightly different from postpartum itself in that if the birth had been traumatic, mothers can have that. So I think these are all, for me, it's a matter of semantics, right? To me, the important thing is that this is real. India has one of the highest incidents of postpartum suicides, right? So it's a really shocking fact, but it's a real one, right? So this is a big issue for me, and I think labels apart, we need to talk about this.
For sure, absolutely. I think this is the need of the hour. There are so many moms struggling with it. We did a small poll, and of course, I mean, this is not just the matter of a poll. We've been getting these kind of responses on Momspresso for years now, talking about postpartum depression, about not even knowing that, a mom was suffering from it till much, much later. So it's obviously it's something that if you know about it, you can deal with it much better. Ritu, that was precisely what your experience was also. Like a whole lot of moms on our platform, you also did not realize that it was postpartum depression that you were dealing with, and you went through that trauma for many, many years. Tell us about your experience.
Absolutely, Parul. My understanding of postpartum is entirely retrospective. When I was going through it, I had no idea. And I think and it's not that I did not know about the existence of postpartum depression. I had read a lot to be prepared for what was the changes that were going to happen in my life. But the thing with depression in general is that you can read a lot about it, but when you go through it, it is extremely difficult to recognize. And especially as a new mother, there is so much that changes in your life all of a sudden. You don't know what it is. You don't know whether it's the physical exhaustion, whether it is the fact that you're not getting enough sleep, whether it is just that you're not being able to cope with this new person in your life who's crying, who's needy, and whose needs you're unable to understand right now. And you're scared whether you will be able to understand or figure out how to raise this new child. And there is so much that's going on in your life. You don't know what exactly it is that you're struggling with, and it's difficult to know at that point. I mean, I would love for Dr. Sangheetha to tell us how to identify it in ourselves. And so yes, for me, for the longest time I had no idea that it was depression. It was just a feeling of being low. And in my case, I'd say it got clubbed with very unhelpful, very toxic external circumstances, and it was just a combination of whole lot of factors, and it just went on and on till a point where, um, I kept feeling that I can handle this, I can handle this. It would have been very helpful if I would have had some help, or I would have sought therapy. But depression also comes with a lot of mental fog. When you're going through it, you don't have that clarity. When I look back, I have absolute clarity that this is what I should have done. But when you're going through it, there is so much mental fog. You're so overwhelmed. Your brain is not, it's like trying to run a marathon when your leg is broken. You cannot function the same. Your brain is not functioning the same, and you don't know that that's what you need. Which is why I feel that it's so important if we are able to have a conversation on how we can identify it in ourselves and in someone, especially in somebody else who might be going through it, because that person might not be in a position to seek help.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's a really good question, Ritu. So I think I'll start off by saying this, right? So I think what compounds this issue is that as women globally, right, and especially India, so there is a lot of shame in women's bodies, and there are multi-million dollar businesses that are running off of women feeling shame in their bodies, right? So we've never and that shame is crippling, right? So a lot of times women have developed compensatory mechanisms like dissociating from their bodies to function, right? We see that a lot, in the workplace, and it's sort of minimizing your femininity, minimizing what your body is telling you, constantly wanting to prove that you're equal to or above, the other gender, all of these things, right? So I think there is a fundamental underlying, if you're looking at a modern urban woman globally, right? I think there is a lot of we've never been more disconnected from our bodies now as we've ever been before, right? So I think that is the fundamental, that's kind of the starting point for this conversation for me. And then what happens is the process of conception, pregnancy, birth really compounds it, right? So it puts you it takes you further away from going into yourself and listening to the body and your body sensations and your body cues, right? Because it's sort of like you go and give your body to the hospital, and they give you back your body and your babies, right? Like, so I think even the whole experience is very depersonalized. It's like going into a conveyor belt, that whole system of if you needed help with conception, etc., right? So while we're having a lot of conversations around what bassinet to buy, and which baby carrier you should use and all of that, right? Because there's this money depend, we're not actually going inward and asking these questions about what it means. Because just like puberty, matrescence or our journeys into motherhood is a significant change in our bodies, in our nervous systems, in our beings, right? So it is, we're metamorphing into something else. It's like the caterpillar becoming a butterfly, right? You know how they say it actually.
I'm going to interrupt you just there to show a slide from your own page, in fact. So if you can see this, are you able to see the slide?
Yes, I have. Yeah.
So pre-baby, this is from your page.
Yes.
And exactly what you just said right now. I'm just repeating that for the sake of illustration. We've talked about all these things: baby monitors, breast pump, car seats, etc., where the baby sleeps. But what about this really, really important? I mean, there's a whole list of things that you've written with, I wish we had discussed: how to know if my mental health was not right and how to talk to me about it. I think that's such a valid point. And back to you.
Yes. Yeah. So in the context of postpartum, what are some of the signs that we can look for, right? So one thing is this, many mothers can relate to this feeling of hypervigilance, as if I closed my eyes, if everybody says when baby sleeps you go to sleep, but actually this anxiety, right, makes you feel, and anxiety and depression are kind of the different sides of the same coin, right? So when you think about your body, anxiety is a heightened activated state, nervous energy in the body, right? And then the charge becomes too much, and then you drop down and dissociate and freeze. So that is depression, right? And what happens is sometimes you can yo-yo multiple times during the day between heightened anxiety and then heightened depression. See, so it is like driving your car with the brakes and accelerator on at the same time. That is literally what the body feels. Because on the one hand, there is a lot of energy in there's hypervigilance. Like if I close my eyes, something's going to happen to my baby. Some women might experience that, is unable to give the baby even to the dad or the mother or the mother-in-law to soothe, right? Some women might feel really protective. Some women might experience it as intense anxiety. So you see something on TV, somebody has cancer, you're worried that your child's gonna get it and die, right? So these are all the thoughts that are going. So that is one example. Nightmares, constant flashbacks, like vivid flashbacks of the birth, or what happened in the birth. If it, like I said, if it goes beyond sort of 3 months, 4 months, and it's persistent, that's definitely a sign, right? And then being emotional and crying, like again, in that spectrum, in the initial days it is also hormonal, right? Your hormones are hugely plummeting, right? Your progesterone levels come down and prolactin levels come up and all of that stuff, right? So but if it's persistent, that is a red flag. Or thoughts of harming yourself or the baby, wanting to disconnect with the baby, feeling unable to really connect with the baby. Again, there is a lot of nuance in this. It's not like if it is hard, if it's persistent, if you can't trust yourself to be around the baby all alone, then these are all signs where it is absolutely okay to seek help. What flashbacks, what are panic attacks, hypervigilance, continued hypervigilance, uh, feelings that you're not a good enough mother. We all have some level of that, but
Right.
if it's affecting your ability to uh, do day-to-day tasks, then it's definitely good to seek help.
No, absolutely. And in fact, we had a question. I'm just reading everything as we are talking. So we had somebody asking for the symptoms. I think you've already done that. You've already gone through the symptoms. We've had Sarita Shukla mention that there was a lot on her mind: fear, insecurity, pain of not being able to handle the baby. You just touched upon that, making her feel worthless. And in fact, there are so many messages that have come in, of course. Like I mentioned earlier, you've been some part of some of those conversations as well. So I'm just going to share some of those images as well. Let's see how fast we can do that. I'm also getting there. There we are. I wish I was educated enough. Basically, people just want to know if they had more awareness, they would have had some kind of mindful practices to be able to deal with it. I also wish my immediate family and husband were more aware of this area. I read a lot, but it was all around baby related queries. I never bothered to read about post pregnancy care. Finally, after a year, I realized that I didn't want to run away from motherhood. I just wanted some time by myself. Being prepared for it would definitely help couples. I had a rare type of PPD called DMARE, and my 6 months were an emotional nightmare. But the lack of awareness about it is horrifying. I kept blaming and questioning my feelings. After some years, I came across this term. But it is for real and it is difficult. Awareness could have helped me. Some support may have made it less tough. I wish I could reverse it and be a different mother to my child. I felt like I was a horrible mother as soon as my son was born. I think I felt like I didn't love him at all. PPD is not something that goes away. I went through it for almost 2 years. And every time I blamed people around me for everything. It was a living hell. Just reading these messages, it just, it brings you, of course, it takes you back to your times and all. And I don't think I suffered that kind of severe PPD. So I can't even imagine the trauma of thinking there's something wrong with you when you've just had a baby, when the world is telling you to rejoice. This is this is what you were meant for. This is why you were born on earth. You've just fulfilled your duty as, to the universe, and you're not happy about it. So that constant self-doubt, demonization of your own mind, I think that is it's just horrifying, to say the absolute least. Ritu, I'm going to bring you in on this question over here, that you've talked about it and we've discussed this about the blissful depiction, like you were saying earlier, we were talking about the movies, a radiant mother, that blissful depiction. It's actually a huge disservice at the end of the day. I mean, we need that for sure, of course, but that can't be the only picture. How do we show the reality? And in which ways, and where all? I'd love for you to put your mind to it, because you worked in television, you've been associated with print. Your book is a prime example of that, and in fact I have a copy with me right here. So would you like to talk about the book while I kind of turn the pages?
I think I'll talk about the myth that you were talking about earlier, because I think that's a very important conversation again. I don't think we need that at all. I don't think new motherhood looks like that at all. I mean, I would love to hear from a new mother who was that radiant and calm and blissful and peaceful, in the first month. Motherhood does not look like that at all. And trying or telling ourselves that that is what it should look like and why am I not looking like that, that's terribly damaging. I mean, new motherhood, you are disheveled, you are in pain, you are in terrible physical pain, you're confused, you don't know what's going on, you are scared, you don't know if you'll ever be able to figure out how to do this. You're scared that you've brought a new life into this world and maybe you don't have what it takes to look after it. I mean, and yet, somehow we're supposed to look like that. We don't. You're in a lot of pain. You can't sit. You are trying to figure out breastfeeding and it's painful and nobody told you that it's painful. So I think we need to have a real picture of what motherhood looks like.
And in fact, not only did anybody not tell you that it's going to be painful, it's considered radical to think about self-care. A mother, it's, you're not expected to think about yourself because we're ingrained to believe that we're the nurturers, we're the ones with the maternal instinct. Who will take care of the baby if you don't take care of the baby? So taking care of yourself.
There are a lot of harmful myths. First is the mother just glowing with radiance and bliss, which is a harmful myth because that makes you feel guilty about all the self-doubt that you're feeling, and that you're feeling anything other than gratitude at that point in time.
Yeah.
So, the guilt that comes with it, that's a harmful myth. There is also the harmful good girl myth, that you're supposed to be unselfish at all times.
Right.
Which is why we feel uncomfortable telling our own family members that I'm unable to do this. We keep pushing ourselves, trying to take care of our families. We keep trying to please everybody, keep everybody happy, not ruffle any feathers, not be very demanding. So that's the good girl myth, which is also very damaging. And then there is also the strong woman myth, which is very damaging. I ought to be able to take care of this on my own. I should be on top of this. I do not need help. I'm strong. I can handle this. That's another very damaging myth, because at some point you have to realize that
You have to reach out.
yes, that, and the fact that you have to admit to your own vulnerability to yourself first, and realize that you need help.
Yes.
You are going through a week. You're probably at your weakest at this point in time. You need help. To just admit it to your own self is difficult, because of all these three myths that we have around us. So I don't think there's anything helpful about these myths. I think we need to have a very realistic depiction of what motherhood feels like. It is not a pedestal. It is not bliss at all for the first few months,
Yes.
for first few weeks. I'm not sure if there's any new mother who's not gone through guilt, who's not reconsidered the decision, who's not felt absolute fear, who's not doubted her own abilities, and who's not cried out in pain.
Absolutely. You use the right word. You say it's not a pedestal, and this image is really doing us more harm than anything else.
Yes, I don't think there should be any pressure on us to live up to that image, especially from within our own selves.
Yeah.
We should be able to come out and say that it's okay. I'm not being able to handle it. I need help. I
really need popular media to be on our side, at least for this aspect, to be able to show that reality. It's gone on for too many years of, the same idea being propagated, ki maa hi devi hai, and, all of that.
also, there are so many things. I mean, I was telling Sangheetha earlier that I was completely prepared for the baby. I knew what creams I was going to use. I knew what is best
Yes.
for baby's skin. I did not know how much care I would need. We don't realize how fragile new mothers are, both emotionally and physically. For instance, who speaks to us about how we'll not be able to sit?
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, if I had known that, I would have made certain arrangements before going to the hospital so that I could just sit.
My experience, exactly. Everybody told me about labor pains, but they don't tell you about the aftermath.
Or how scary it is to actually, this is what I talk about. I mean, people think labor is painful, but there are lots of women who tell you that there are things far more painful than the labor contractions, which is the internal exam, right? The episiotomy, opening your bowels for the first time after you've had a child. My God, that's terrifying. I would birth again, but I wouldn't do that. That's
I was
like
too scared to go to the washroom because I was worried about the pain. I was worried about having to sit again. I didn't want to have enough water because I did not want to go to the loo. We need to be prepared. The lack of sleep, the physical exhaustion. I mean, I think it's really damaging that we don't have these conversations before. For instance, I was talking to somebody the other day, and she said, when she tried to talk to her elders about what giving birth would feel like, she was told, "Arey kuch nahi hota, cheek maro aur baby nikal jata hai." That's what her nani told her.
Oh my God. Maybe I can offer a little bit of context here, right? So I think our nannies, the grandmothers of the world, had a very different view on birth than our mothers, right? And that is because our mothers were one of the first generation of people to actually give birth in a hospital, right? So if you think about your nanny or the generation before that, most children were born at home, right? Birth was largely a home-based event, just like death.
And there were many babies that they were giving birth.
That's right. That's correct. Right. But also, I think there was a community aspect around it where women would come together as a community to hold the mother, right? So when we are babies, right, when all of us, when we were in our mother's wombs, were encased by two layers of support. So there is the amnion, and then the chorion. So there are two layers that are supporting us, right? So
Yes.
somatically, our bodies carry this imprint of needing two layers of support, right? So that's sort of a biological necessity. So when you look at it like that, the mother is nurturing the baby, but that is why we need the whole community of people around her, a village, to come and hold her so she can hold the baby, right?
That's a
And that
biological necessity then. I mean, I've never looked at it from that perspective,
it,
but yeah, that's great.
that's how our communities are created. They're centered around this concept, right? It's like a ripple. There's one new life, and then there's concentric circles, layers of
Yeah.
support where we come around each other, right? So in that sense, women are there is this linear way of thinking, right? Task, outcome, orientation, right? But from a nurturing standpoint and bringing life standpoint, there is a lot of collaboration, cooperation, nurturing aspects, right? But what we have done as career women, right, is like saying that instead of, so this is my playground if I want to raise children and these are my rules, right? We've actually said, I'm going to go to your playground where there's hierarchy, there's power, there is sort of linear task outcome based thinking, and I'm going to show you that I can do it better than you, which we have, right? But when we become mothers, and I think when you're in a relationship, when you're dating, until that baby comes, you can pretty much live like that, right? And then suddenly there's a baby, and whatever skill sets that you had which made you really successful in the outside world really doesn't translate to raising a child, because there is no instant feedback, there is no appraisals, there is no pay raise, right? It's like, what am I doing? Am I doing well? Am I not doing well? What is this whole thing about?
Yes. And it's, I
Sangeetha,
think,
in
the
fact,
first time.
sorry, Ritu, I'm just going to take up a few questions that are coming in before we proceed with that. In fact, I think Shimona has a very valid point that how can I approach a friend who I think is depressed? What are the words that I can use? Because, Ritu, you mentioned this whole thing about support, and Sangeetha, you've been talking about it as well. So I see somebody who I can recognize, especially after, going through experiences of my own. I recognize that, yes, this is someone who needs help, but she's not reaching out to me because she's probably not aware, like
Yes.
most of us weren't.
Yes.
How do I reach out to her? What kind of words do I use? I'd like both of you to weigh in on this, in fact. Sangeetha, let's start with you.
That's a really good question. I think a lot of us, friends or family, right, even well-meaning, we don't use the right words, right, and we unintentionally scar this woman, right? A lot of times it's unintentional also, sometimes it's intentional also, right? But I think the root is we're very, very uncomfortable with going in there and sitting and witnessing someone else's discomfort. So
Yes.
because that makes us uncomfortable,
Yes.
right? So we're trying to constantly push them to get to a better place so we feel better, you know. So if a mom's crying and there's loss, for example, or anything, right, it's like, oh, cheer up, wipe your tears, give me a smile before I go, things like that, right? So I think there is a lot of issues around centering around ourselves or making it about ourselves. So the person who wants to provide support, I think the first step is unintentionally don't make it about yourself. And the second thing is, actually don't problem solve or troubleshoot. I mean, that's really, really hurtful, right? To say, I know the answer and I know it better than you, and I'm going to tell you exactly what to do. And it's okay for us to say, I have no idea. And even if you've been through depression yourself, each person experiences it differently. So don't go in there presuming that you're the expert, right? So I would just say, I see you, I'm witnessing what you're going through, I'm going to be here for you, and that's it. I think there is a need for us to troubleshoot, minimize, and then use toxic positivity to say, oh, everything will be fine, you just breathe and it'll all go away. And actually that's really toxic, right? And also or spiritual bypassing. We say, oh, just pray to God and he'll, there's a magic wand and it'll all get better, and that's spiritual bypassing. All of that comes from our inability to sit with somebody else's discomfort and stay there, right? Because I think a lot of things come out of just staying there, knowing that it's hard right now, and just staying there, right? And then things will evolve. And I think just say, I'm going to sit with you and witness this, and I'm here for you.
That's great. I mean, I don't think I've ever thought of a term like toxic positivity, but that puts it in such a brilliant nutshell. All of this, those I don't know, don't even know what to call them. They're not terms. They're not anything. They're not calming at all. But it'll all get better with time, and you'll see the joy out of it, and all those are just laxatives, really, as far as comfort is concerned. So that's a really very clear demarcation of what to do and what not to do. Do not, give any kind of lame kind of terms or anything. Use words like support. Yes, Ritu, please go ahead.
I think sometimes it's as simple as asking the other person, "Are you okay?" and be willing to listen without judgment, without offering your own solutions. And before you try and offer support to somebody, I think you also need to evaluate whether you can handle it, whether a person opens up to you about something that's really dark and intense. Will you be able to take it without wanting to run away? Because it's not helpful if you ask a person to open up to you and then shut them mid conversation and say, "I can't handle it," or then try and shut the person out because it pulls you down. You should know that it's an experience which is debilitating for the person who's going through it. If you are asking them to share a part of their load with you, before
Be
you
ready to take it.
before you do that, know if you're committed to taking it, because otherwise it's just harmful for the other person.
No, that's true. That's absolutely true. Know what you're getting into.
Yes.
And if you have that experience and you are very clear about it, you know what that is.
And just start with, "Are you okay?" It's okay if the other person doesn't want to talk about it. Maybe the third time you ask, and just don't judge. Offer a space which is without judgment.
Right.
Just
And
listen.
any kind of support starts with that. Any support starts with a place of no judgment, from a place of no judgment.
Yeah. Or noticing, right? You could just say, "This is hard, isn't it?" Or you can say, "Wow, you're doing a great job." Now, this is what people don't tell. And there's a fine line between, again, this toxic positivity versus actually tangibly noticing what is going right with the parenting. Because actually, believe it or not, the woman's not seeing how great of a mother she is, because we think we're a failure. We're so taken in by this anxiety and this feeling of failure, that it can be a really small thing, right? Like, for example, the mother's changing the diaper, and you can say, "Wow, you did that really slowly so that baby didn't get hurt. I saw that." So that is something really tangible, and it's not fake praise. It is actually noticing it, right? So that orients her to, "Oh wow, I'm doing something right." But again, and resisting the urge to fix it, because we are uncomfortable with sitting with somebody else's discomfort. That is incredibly um, disempowering for anybody that's going through mental health issues.
Right. Sangheetha, we have a viewer called Geet. Geet is she's been posting a lot of queries and really wants to know some solutions. She herself has been through postpartum depression, and she just wants to know how to come out of that.
I'm going to resist the urge to problem solve on this call.
No, so in fact,
yes.
I think we've lost Ritu on the network temporarily. I'm sure she'll be logging back in. I'm going to ask her own experiences, of course, what it took for her to get out. From your experience, and what is it that you advise people? Like you said, that no one solution can fit all. But in general, what are the 2 or 3 legs of advice or treatment that you would recommend to somebody who's going through postpartum depression?
So one of the things that I would say is, see if you can join mummies peer support groups. I think there is a lot of it. Momspresso itself, I think, is a big forum, for example, right? So I think the mommy groups and peer support groups can be really useful, and some of them are very well moderated, so there is no judgment or shaming, right? And so I'm starting with that, right? Or there are WhatsApp peer support groups for postpartum mothers. There are Facebook groups, etc. Right. So I think finding a like-minded group of women, I think, is one tip that I would give.
And I'll
The
just
second,
interrupt you there. And we've seen the success of that. As soon as somebody, moms realize that you are not alone, that these are symptoms where other people are also going through, and it's not you who's abnormal. It makes you feel much better. So I totally support this, the first advice that you've given. Please, sorry
yes,
to cut you short. Please carry on.
yeah. So that is the first thing, and the second thing is seeking, and I'm going to say this with the caveat that sometimes it's incredibly hard, right? The reason I think therapy and counseling is something to look into, but I think one of the issues with that is talk therapy, that there is limits to cognitive therapy, there's limits to talk therapy, because sometimes when you are look talking about this traumatic incident, your trauma pathways get further strengthened, right? So it kind of further so there is limits to what cognitive talk therapy can do. So that is one of the issues. So you want to find a therapist who can actually is very conversant and trained in understanding this mind and body construct. Okay, so there are lots of things that are in the unconscious level in terms of fear, right? And so there are modalities that are very gentle and work with that, but there are also a lot of body based modalities, because the body carries the story, right? So when you think about trauma, for example, so if I asked you what happened in the first 6 months of your life, you probably have no conscious recollection, right? There is no, I can't tell you what it is because I don't remember. But that is because the part of my brain that actually processes memories, called the hippocampus, doesn't come online until 18 months. But those memories are actually stored in your body as body memories, right? So what I'm saying is, you want to find a type of healing modality that goes beyond just I will talk to you and you will give me solutions. Again, that's very disempowering, right? So if I tell you, hey, I'm really sad, and you tell me, you go out and walk for 45 minutes, the point is I can't even get out of my bed, and that shames me further, right? So I feel like even more of a failure, so I'm not going to come back to you, right? So I think find somebody that is actually more interested in the can work at much deeper levels than just the cognitive story.
Right.
And then of course there's the doctor bit, right? So if it and there's no reason they can't coexist. I've personally worked with situations where I'm sharing care with a psychiatrist. So the woman is seeing the psychiatrist for medications, but there is the therapy side that I'm working with. So
Right.
sometimes they can coexist also.
Of
And
course.
again, if need, definitely seek help if that's not working. It's absolutely okay to go to a psychiatrist and get prescribed medication. There's no shame in that. So
Yeah, I think that's the first point. I think we have to realize that there is no shame in seeking help. Ritu, we were talking about treatment, that, we have one of our viewers, Geet, who's just wants a solution. She wants to know how to deal with it. And we were talking about how it's difficult to have a one size fits all kind of solution, but it's
Yes.
good to discuss experiences. And Sangheetha touched upon a couple of things which would certainly help. But we'd love to know from you, what was it that helped you? And I know you mentioned that you realized that it was PPD much later in retrospect, but at the time, while you were going through a dark phase, let's just call it that, what helped you through it?
Um, Parul, I'll be very honest here. Nothing did. Because I firstly did not know what I was going through. I did not have enough information or enough mental clarity to seek help, and I should have. So I'm not going to recommend my own way out of it to anybody, because it was, um, it took me 6 years, because factors on factors kept piling on each other. And it was 6 excruciating years of trying to function. Like I said, trying to run a marathon with a broken leg. It was 6 years of trying to do that. For
Six
me,
years is a lot.
a lot.
it's a very long time, and it takes a lot out of you. You are,
Absolutely.
um,
Of course.
even when you come out of it, um, you have to, it takes so much to put your own self back together. So it's I'll tell you what I wish I had, because I did not. One solution A is to dig your heels in and say you need help, that you're not okay, to not try and keep lying to yourself or lying to those around you and keep thinking that you're okay, you will be okay. If you can't function, it took me 6 years to come to a point where I realize that I cannot function, unless I get help. Don't stretch it that long. If, break down now and say that, okay, I can't function, I need help, I'm not able to do it. It's okay to not have the answer. It's okay to not know what is going to get you out of it right now. But you have to admit to yourself and those around you that this situation is not sustainable for you and you need help. So to make that start is very important. It's what takes you out of it can be a lot of different things. For instance, for me, I hope Dr. Sangheetha tells me if I'm right about this, but sometimes it's one of the factors is certain deficiencies, certain things like vitamin D or vitamin B12 or consistently low BP can exhibit as depression. So I was going through postpartum depression, and then which became regular depression. And the fact that I had all of those issues which never got diagnosed just made it tougher, because physically you can't do certain things that you need to do to keep yourself in a good space. So to just have, I felt instantly better. And after I got my D3 shots, and after I see it, realize that I have low BP and I have to do something about it. So now when I go through a low, my go-to thing is to first check my BP, and oftentimes it's just low BP. Sometimes it's as simple as that. So we don't know.
Point. I mean, we all probably go through those. It's at least an easy point to be able to diagnose and to get out of the way.
And secondly, you have to understand if what it's very difficult without knowing a person's situation to say what are the factors that may be affecting that person. You have to check what your support system is. Are you living in a is the system around you supportive, or is the system around you toxic? Sometimes it's you just have to do something about the life that surrounds you. Sometimes you're caught up in a very toxic environment. You have to know whether your depression is stemming from that. So there can be a lot of complex factors, and it's very difficult for somebody else to give you a tailor-made solution. You have to go within and try and understand. Firstly admit that there's a problem.
Right.
Try and understand and ask for help.
So
go online on a forum.
There are a lot of comments coming on this thread, and like you said, it's going to be very difficult to, of course, give solutions like this, but perhaps you can help them with a starting point. Bratati says, even when you shout and say you're having PPD, people hardly understand. They start judging. I had to hear that I'm unhappy to have a kid. So I'm emotionally down. I have a horrible time. I'm still struggling. Geet has a similar problem. She said, I don't find time. It's a big issue. Every man wants his wife to be well dressed, beautiful looking, but how can she get time for herself? She says, I become silent when I open my mouth to say anything. It comes out like my frustrations are coming out.
So I would love to answer that. Firstly, when I tried to talk to my own mom about how I was feeling, about my frustrations, I was constantly told that, how can you feel that way? People don't have children, and God has blessed you with such a beautiful child, and you should be grateful. How can you have these thoughts? So you have to understand that everybody will not understand what you're going through, and you may not get the response that you're looking for, but you have to validate yourself if you're not getting that from outside. It's okay. We are all sitting here and talking about it to tell everybody that
I think Ritu has been having some really bad network issues. But Sangheetha, I think, the point that she was making, that it is possible to get out of it.
Oh,
and
yes,
absolutely. That way. Yeah. I think that's probably one window that we need to show to, to Geet and to Bratati and to Farah. And there's just so many questions. I'm not being able to keep up with them.
Yes.
But these women are broken. by the
Yes.
reactions, the bad judgment that they're getting. So
Yes.
please do show them some kind of a window of hope.
No, it's definitely possible. See, I think there are lots of things that are going on in and around birth, right? So on the one hand, there is the cultural context that birth has changed, right? So the way we've birthed has changed a lot, right? So we're not birthing the way our grandmoms gave birth. And I don't mean from how over medicalized birth is, right? I also mean that there was a lot of community ritual sort of holding, that happened, right? So there is this, and they had more babies, but also
Right.
they didn't have
It was genuinely a village that was raising the child.
that
You know,
was
as the
raising the
proper approach.
but I think there was also clarity. I mean, look, it's not like I'm recommending that we go back to those times, definitely not, but I'm saying that I think we're putting all this that's what I'm saying, right? So we want to compete and do everything that we have to do in the outside world and be better at it than men, to kind of because it's doubly hard for women to be taken seriously at work. So on the one hand, we're kind of stuck in that fight mode, right? In the outside world, to kind of get our place, right? But then motherhood is sort of like, yes, my body's got a womb, I've got a partner, and I want to birth a baby. That's a completely different ball game altogether, right? But what it does is it puts a lot of our relationships in perspective. A lot of us, I think this is a big myth that women are told, you just have a baby and everything will be okay. So if you've got issues with your husband, for example, right? I think there is again this tendency to power through that discomfort, right? Everybody will say, just have a child and then it'll all be okay. No, that's not okay, right? Because what a child is like a magnifying glass. If you have a foundationally, if your relationship is strong foundationally, then you get closer when you have the child. But if there are significant cracks in the relationship, there is the tendency to crumble also, right? So it puts your existing foundational relationship under the microscope. So having a child is not a panacea, it is not the cure all for things that have underlying the issues, and also attachment issues with our own mother figures, whether it's our own mothers or whether it's our own mother-in-law, and also our husbands, right? And how, what attachment looks and feels like. Was there secure attachment or was there anxious attachment, right? So all of this figures at postpartum, and yet nobody's told us anything about this, right? We're just looking at it as a clinical, I want the baby out, I'm going to put them in the stroller, go back to work, get my body back, get back to drinking. That is essentially what we've reduced matrescence to.
That's true. Yes, Ritu.
I'm sorry, before I got disconnected, you had also asked, somebody had asked a question about how do you look the part? Every man wants his wife to look nice. And
Yes,
again, and that's where I bring in that myth of that blissful, radiant mother. We need to talk about how, nobody will expect you to look great after you've had a surgery. If you've had a bypass, nobody's expecting you to look your best after that. But because of that myth that has been perpetuated, somehow we are expected to, just go back to looking. All these celebrities,
yeah, they're not helping.
post motherhood look, that does not help, because you feel that you can do that. I don't know how they do that, but
No, but I think also it's the same with over sexualizing women's bodies, right?
yes.
I think it starts with the teenager. It starts with the body shaming. It starts with, men looking at porn and thinking that's what, sex with the wife is going to look like, and then shaming the wife's body because it wasn't what they saw in porn. All of that, right? Like I'm saying, the real unrealistic expectations, it's not just pertaining to birth. I think we've struggled with it all through life.
And this just makes it worse. And the thing is, I'll bring in my own experience here. Going through postpartum depression, you sometimes you can't really care about what you're wearing and what you're looking like and whether you've been to the parlor. And I know
Expected to. You've gone through a lot.
Absolutely.
And I did hear somebody talking about me behind my back about the fact that, some friend told me that some other friend was saying that, उसका upper lip देखा, threading नहीं किया हुआ था. I mean, you have to
Grow
people
up.
will judge you. Like I
But
said,
your body, your womb just created this whole new human being, like new life. Your body is that amazing, right? Like however the baby came out, I don't care, right? I think we should all just be put on pedestals and people falling at our feet because our bodies have just done something so amazing. And yet all you can focus on is my eyebrows. I mean, really, come on,
no,
you know.
the thing is, the reason why I'm saying it is not because this happened to me. The reason why I'm
No,
saying it is
yes.
because this is what new motherhood looks like.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's okay. It's okay to, maybe not take a bath for a few days because you haven't slept and you don't have the energy to do that. And if somebody is judging you for that, please know that, there's nothing that's wrong with you. There's something that's wrong with that person's perception of what motherhood should look like. And please don't let that damage you. Dig your heels in and say, it's fine. I'm not feeling up to it. And that's fine.
There is so much to talk about, and I know that we can go on. There are questions which are pouring in. We have, the perspective is plainly, it's got a lot to do with recognition, with awareness of your own systems, with support coming in from family. Neena Chandra has a great point where she says husbands need to be involved at every stage of
Oh,
pregnancy.
yes.
A new mother
Absolutely.
is overwhelmed. Tasks of, all the feeding, burping, etc. It is daunting. And
Yes.
right, she says all of this triggers postpartum depression.
Yes.
So I mean that's one part of it.
Parul, as a society, we are not even
We're not.
expecting fathers to play any role in raising a new child.
Absolutely.
Where are the paternity leaves? I mean,
That is it. Yes.
if I get a 6 month maternity leave, I'm looking after the baby. Who's looking after me?
Correct.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Am I
Absolutely.
expected to look after myself and the baby? I mean, I've
Yes.
had the baby with another person. That person needs to play a role too.
Yeah, that's
You need a
sperm
6 month
donors, right?
baby as
Like
well.
we don't expect, and also I think the mother and the mother-in-law also kind of crowd that space as soon as the woman comes home with the baby. I think I
Yes.
see that a lot. It's like,
Yes.
oh, he's got work to do, so I'm going to do the nighttime parenting. I'm going to sleep next to her.
Absolutely.
But I think there is a lot of bonding that comes, and this is a new family, so the husband, wife, and the child need that space and to build that intimacy as a family,
Yeah.
and nighttime parenting is a great way to do that, right? And I think much as the fathers, we're not expecting the fathers to do it, even the ones that want to do it get pushed out by these pushy other
Yes.
women,
No,
because the
it's
birth space is
very
still
true.
very women dominate. Like
That women
it's the
dominate.
mother, it's the mother-in-law,
Without realizing it, that a lot of new age fathers want to be involved in the process.
exactly,
I
that's
mean, this is
right.
part of them now, like Ritu, what you just said, that, if I made a child with another person and that person wants to be a part of it, why should I push him out of that space? In fact, we are running a little short of time. So I'm just going to try and, put things together, all the perspectives that we've got. And it's obvious that this is a multi-layered problem. I mean, it's not going to be possible to discuss it in one session. We've tried our best. We've uncovered a whole lot of layers over here. And we know that, yes, it's just like any other mental health problem. It has to be looked at many dimensions and differently for different people. Like you said, Sangheetha, that your body will respond to something and it may not respond to someone else. It has to start with family support. I would request everybody who's watching this to please share it with the men in your family. Share it with anybody who is about to have a baby, who has a young baby in the house. The men, I'm talking about specifically about the men. Let them get a little bit of a glimpse into what is happening on the other side. So for a lot of men, they're not even aware, like you're told to hush up your own dark feelings. You're not supposed to be feeling like that. Just like the comments that we've been getting. So maybe that's one place where we can get a little more support. The real game changer for postpartum depression will definitely be advocacy, will be spreading awareness, will be interventions for shifting these kind of gender-based attitudes. I think that is where we'll actually be able to see any kind of change happening. So thank you so much. I would just right now, I'm going to close this, but the comments I know will continue. Sangeetha and Ritu, I'd request you to please do look at this thread once again and put down your comments wherever you feel you're able to contribute to somebody's question. Please do that because I know they'll be looking forward to it as well. Thank you so much for joining us on this session. Thank you for all the very interesting perspectives that you've given to the discussion. And to our viewers, as always, thank you for watching.
You're very welcome. Thanks.
Thanks.